and handing over
All
to
right.
Lisa.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We know this is a super busy time of year, the holidays. If you celebrated Hanukkah, I hope it was a great one. For those celebrating Christmas and Kwanzaa, I hope it'll be a wonderful holiday. We were recording this because we haven't yet. This is our 11th Zoom call. So we are in 2024, just to give a little plug, we are going to be continuing these Zoom calls at this time, the third Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And we hope that you can join us throughout the year. We're going to have a lot of different guest speakers as we do today. So again, my name is Lisa Reese, and unfortunately, David Caruso could not join us today. But we have Zena, who's actually calling in from the UK. And she's still coordinating this all, and we so appreciate it. And our guest speaker today, Lee Dowling, who's calling in from the Chicago, Illinois area. So we're going to welcome her in just a moment. But before we do this, we always like to use the model to teach the model. And so we want to know, how are you? How are you feeling right now as it's a couple of days before Christmas? And I'm sure everybody is busy and you're taking time out of your schedules. So what I'd like to do is share what we call the mood map with you. And what we know is that our emotions can be tracked based on how much energy and how pleasant we are feeling. So I would love for people in the chat, if you wouldn't mind putting, how are you feeling? And if their word isn't on here, use another emotion word. How are you doing right now? So in the chat, how are you? Fulfilled. And again, it doesn't matter what emotion, it's what it is. All right, thoughtful, composed, recharging, excited. Yeah, great. Wonderful. It's a good time of year to feel that hope, right? And curious where people are calling in from today. If you could just put, where are you calling in from geographically? Where are you? Because sometimes we have people who are like, wow, they're calling in from this area. So where are you? San Antonio and Greater Boston, London. Oh, wow. All right. Kazakhstan. Yeah. Illinois.
Safe travel.
Great. And I'm calling in from Vermont in the States. Great. Wonderful. So, as you know, today's discussion is going to be around public speaking. And I'm going to introduce Lee in just a moment. But I'm just curious when I say this to you. You feel about public speaking? What emotions come up for you when you've been asked to public speak? What emotions do you typically feel? Excitement and tension? Tense, okay. Anxious, yeah. Worried, anxious, hopeful, excited. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for that. That's really great to know that, because that's what we're going to be talking about, these emotions that come up. And we know that there are more helpful emotions than others when it comes to public speaking. So let me introduce you to Lee Dowling. She is a good friend of mine. I met her through my work. And then when I saw her speak, I'm like, I need to know how you do this so effortlessly, it seems, and such joy that she projects. And we became friends. And I asked her to come on today. And she said, of course, I'm going to come on today. So Lee Dowling began her speaking career in radio news in her home state of Connecticut. She transitioned to education and taught literature at the University of North Florida. She has her master's in art, and after returning to New England, she taught English, communication, and public speaking at the Community College of Vermont for over 15 years. Lee started her public speaking coaching business in 2012, working with individuals, small businesses, and nonprofits. Now she's located in the Chicago suburb of Oak Park, Illinois, and her coaching business continues to grow, which we always love to hear. So, Lee, welcome to you, and thank you for taking
Thank you,
time.
Louise.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here, and hello, everyone from everywhere. Good to see you.
Yeah.
See you.
So I have some questions that I'm going to ask Lee, but what I really want to do, and again, these are just starter questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand, or simply put it in chat, and we'll be monitoring chat. But I'd love to start, Lee, with like, how did you become a public speaking coach?
Well, there was no major plan. I kind of stumbled into it. You mentioned the various career moves, but like most people, I had traumatic, I mean, not horribly traumatic, but I had events that took place in my life that made me feel like this big and sweaty and shame. So the first was I was a little kid, maybe 6, 7, in the car, singing along, having a good time, because I was always a gregarious kid. And I decided I would hit a flat note at the end of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And Somewhere Over the Rainbow, yeah, I knew all the words because it was on every year back in the day. And I hit this flat note, and my sister, my younger sister, who was a twin to her brother, my brother, she yelled at the top of her lungs, "Shut up, you can't sing." And it was just, childhood thing, but it stuck with me. And I stopped singing. I put on plays and I tap dance for everybody, but I never sang. I would mouth happy birthday in groups. And then, it affected my life. I didn't join the choir. There were things like that. But then 10 years, 12 years later, I'm in college, first day, first class. I was studying film and I had to take an acting class, and the teacher strode in. I don't even think he introduced himself. He just pointed at me, this little suburbanite in the front row, and said, "You get up here and sing." And it was, as you might imagine, you might be feeling it. It was horrifying. It was humiliating. I got up there and I said, I can't sing. I'm a terrible singer, but I can dance, sing. No, really, I cannot sing. I can tell you some jokes, sing. And of course, as I was watching the audience get more and more tense and uncomfortable, and I could see, the silent prayers, please let her start singing, because it affects everybody when somebody in a group is feeling humiliated, shame, fear, anxiety on that level. And I was feeling all of that. So I could have run, I suppose, but I stayed, and I just croaked out this pathetic version of Good King Wenceslas, of all things, this little Christmas song. And I was just so tiny by the time I finished, and everybody was so relieved. And I kind of slunk or slinked, I don't know which one to use anymore, back to my bleacher, and took 3 Valiums because it was the 70s. And after the class was over, I dropped it. I just dropped the class. But I also had a Scarlett O'Hara kind of moment, like I will never feel like this again, ever. And I got into college radio, and radio went into teaching. And then one day I realized I was singing in my classroom to my students. Now, what had happened? I had gotten comfortable with the sound of my voice. I had stopped caring about what they thought. I had relaxed in my own skin. A whole bunch of things had happened. So then I started really examining public speaking, and through another bunch of life situations, I was asked to teach public speaking. And then I got cancer, and I said, no, I can't teach it, because you have to model what it is best practices are. And so I did not teach that semester, or for 2 years, in fact, but I got back into public speaking and learning more about it by joining Toastmasters International, which I highly recommend to anybody. It's a very welcoming community, nonprofit organization around the world. And I also started working at a museum, Shelburne Museum, where I was a tour guide. So between those things and then teaching public speaking, somebody said, why don't you coach people? Why don't you charge money for this? So I kind of did halfway. I was teaching, I had a husband and a home, and then I had this little side business. And I met you. You were presenting once, and you were fantastic. And was I presenting that day? I don't know why I was there, but anyway,
Oh,
it was a long time ago. And
Yeah.
now that I live in Oak Park, Illinois, I've given up teaching college because it was remote. And all I do is work with individuals now, and they come from the city, executives, college professors, young people who realize that public speaking is going to be a necessary part of their career skill set. And I love it. It's great. It's great
Yeah.
fun. And I have come up with some ways to help people overcome the anxiety, the nervousness, the things that crippled me and that affect most everybody. So
Yeah.
that's
a
what I
great
do.
story. It's a great story because I think that most of us can relate to having that horrifying experience. I mean, how many of us on this call have had a public speaking disaster? I mean, I know I have, and I've been in front of a lot of people, and it shakes your confidence and those emotions that you mentioned. And I see in the chat about like some people read somewhere that people fear public speaking more than death. And I think you're right. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who are just horribly paralyzed by that thought. And so when we think about emotional intelligence, we think about how our emotions impact how we think and our behaviors, it's understandable why we don't want to put ourselves in that situation again. And so feeling that fear, feeling, that anxiety, and we also recognize that some of these emotions, even though they're unpleasant, can actually be helpful because I'm sure, Lee, that you want people to feel a little anxious because they prepare better, and a little, but not so much that it's going to paralyze them. And so I'm wondering when people come to you, what are these things that they're experiencing around it? Is that typical that they're feeling this way? I mean, why do people reach out to you and what are they hoping to accomplish when they reach out to you?
Well, there are speakers, people like you who've been speaking for years, but who've never really been comfortable or who believe that, unlike you, that they could do a better job. Actually, you probably believe you could do a better job. We all do. And so they come to me, but I get a lot of people who come because they're very frightened and fearful, and they realize they need the skill set to communicate at work, to rise up in their career, to be more comfortable in social situations. I've had men come to me who had to be best man at a wedding. And these are grown people, and they come and they're paralyzed at the thought of talking in front of people they admire and family and friends. And so people come with all kinds of feelings, but it usually boils down to fear, anxiety, just the worry that we will sweat, that we will stammer, that people will look at us and think, oh, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. So a lot, it's ego stuff, basically. But I try to approach that gently because it makes sense when you're doing something that is scary in front of strangers very often, that you would be, the primal brain says, be afraid. These are not you. These are not your people. And unfortunately, so much of what people carry with them that hinders their ability to relax and enjoy the experience of public speaking is a childhood event with parents, siblings, in my case, school teachers, bullies, partners sometimes, job things, They just haunt us and we think we've moved on, but we haven't. And because we try to avoid public speaking, we never get comfortable and we never practice and we never look at ourselves and listen to ourselves. And most people don't like the way they sound. So we come in perfectly ready to suffer at the thought of standing in front of other people and being the object of their attention, which many of us do not like. And some of us love it, but not everybody. And those are the people I usually work with.
Yeah, it's true. Not everybody loves to be up there. And I'm just thinking, how this impacts everybody's lives, and like last night we had a public forum where my husband, who's a lawyer, was supposed to say a few words and he angst over it and he wrote everything out. And then during it, he was again, like worried and stumbling. And I was like, nobody knows what you're going to say, Grant. Just say it, But it was interesting that here he has an advanced degree. He is in court all the time. He's in front of the judge, but it's a controlled environment. So it's interesting what you mentioned about that. So let's dive into this. Let's talk about how do people shift from the fear and the anxiety and the paralysis to the excitement and the joy of public speaking. So could you give us some
Thank you for asking.
please, we want to get something out of this. So help us.
Well, I've read these things in books, but mostly after the fact. It's like, boosh, it hits me first, and then I go, whoa. So one day I was in the kitchen, dropped something in the morning. I was in my usual rush. I can do everything and still get there on time. Not true. And I dropped something and I yelled at the top of my lungs. I said, "You idiot." And I heard myself for the first time calling myself an idiot. And I wondered for how long I had been telling myself that I was an idiot. And then I started delving into self-talk and our attitudes about ourselves. And certainly I've grown up in a consumer culture and our world revolves around making us feel like we need products to be enough, more makeup, clothes, diet, car, whatever. So everything about our culture inculcates us to think we're not good enough. And if we're female, we very often have that. And in the family structure, the eldest, the youngest, wherever we sit, there are leftover emotions that come with that. So people come to me and we talk about your self-talk. That's where we always begin. Listening to that little voice. And most people have another voice, and it's the voice that critiques. Sometimes it says, yeah, you're doing a great job, but mostly it tells you, oh, you could have done better. Oh, you're such a loser. Oh, and very often it repeats things that were literally said to us as children. So shut up. You're stupid. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. Or we judge ourselves. You're ugly. You're too old. You're too young, whatever it is. And we repeat it, and we repeat it day after day, year after year. And so, of course, it gets embedded in us. So then when we're supposed to stand up and speak and be relaxed and confident and comfortable so that we can share our information, I can't do this. I'm terrible at this. So we've already put ourselves behind the 8 ball. And our fear of being judged, social anxiety, is massive. And so what I try to do at the very beginning is get all my clients and students to understand that the way you think about yourself affects everything. And the way you think about yourself is far more harsh and cruel than other people think about you.
Yeah.
So I will see flaws that other people don't notice because I am obsessed with Leora. I have to take care of me. So I am keenly aware of every blemish and wrinkle and spot on my shirt, and nobody else notices. And once I realized, and you said it to Grant last night, Grant, nobody knew what you were going to say. So there was nobody sitting there going, well, he didn't get to paragraph 3 and he didn't read it, nobody. But we don't think like that. We scrutinize ourselves in such brutal ways, and very often because our parents did it to us, but not always. And so we have to go and undo years of thinking. So we have to now start saying positive things to ourselves. I have exercises that include looking yourself straight in the eye in the morning in the mirror when you look your worst, theoretically. And although if you're 22, maybe, but look yourself in the eye and say, you're beautiful, you're capable, and I love you. And it doesn't have to do with outer beauty. It has to do with inner beauty and capability and intelligence and love. I love you. So you kind of have to fall in love with yourself, because if you think about the best speakers, they're relaxed. They're not concerned with their looks or their body, they're aware of their body language and they've done their best to look good. But this morning, I knew I wasn't going to wake up younger and thinner. I was just going to work with the makeup and the hair that I have and the clothes in my closet and show up and then try to be here for you. And that's the next big shift. Public speaking is about giving the gift of your knowledge, wisdom, expertise, data, stories, inspiration. It's about giving. It's not about being looked at and judged, which is a selfish thing. It's a very selfish thing. And you cannot control what other people think of you. So if you let go of that and you realize, wait a sec, I have something to offer. These people are sitting in the room. They want to hear what I have to say. They tuned in. They're giving me their most precious gift, time. What do I want to give them in return? What do they deserve? What do they need? They may or may not know. What do they want? What do they expect? So I think from the audience's perspective, I go into every event, who is the audience? What do they want? What do they need? What do they expect? What do they deserve? And I try to give of myself generously to them. And when I'm thinking about my audience, and I'm not thinking about me being judged, then it sets me free, because I love to give. People love to give. People love to help each other. So if you have something important to say, I want everyone to have the courage and the desire to share it, because doing that sets you free to be yourself, enthusiastic, energetic, joyous, helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are that's so important. I'm just thinking about it, like applying it back to me, like how I show up. And the first point you made about self-talk, positive self-talk. And you're right. When you hear the words, when you think that that you love you say, I love myself, I'm going to do great. That's a strategy, right? Like to psych yourself up when you're about to go in front of people, and saying, like, I'm going to knock this out of the park. I know that, and that I'm going to do a competent job. I have the skills. And so what it does is that makes that shift in your brain that you are enough and you are, going to do a great job. And then the second piece of that you have a gift to offer, because I know in the beginning when I was doing training, I was always worried about the outcome. I was so worried. And I think that was ego based, like they've got to learn, they've got to get, what I want them to learn. And I remember reading one of your blogs that you said, if we can think about that we are actually giving a gift to others, because a lot of us practice gratitude, and how awesome that we have this opportunity to be in front of these wonderful people and to make sure that we're really present with them and that we're not just checking off the boxes. And so I love that about giving your gift to other people and viewing it that way,
It's so
and thinking about them instead of yourself.
Mhm.
Wow, what a great shift that is. Thank you.
It's a massive shift. And then realizing too that the audience is on your side. your audience wants you to succeed. This isn't junior high school, and hopefully you don't work in a career where there's so much backstabbing that people are like hoping you'll fail. I ask every client, when's the last time you went to an event, whether it was Zoom or in person, where you thought, I hope she fails. I hope she really sucks at this. And people
Right.
laugh and they say, I don't think like that. And I say, of course you don't. Neither do the people in your audience. They want you to feel good. They want you to impart information, not too much information, because
Yeah.
that's overwhelming. So what happens as we work together, you learn to pare back the facts and the data and the information overload, which experts like to put out there because we think everyone wants to and needs to know it, and they don't. But if after a conference or an event, you walk away thinking to yourself, I enjoyed my time with Lee. You know, I really enjoyed my time with Lisa, and she gave me a strategy or two that I can recall, that I can use now. And if I have questions, I know where to go to find the answers.
Yeah.
So very often when I put together a slideshow, there's no bullet points. There's none. I'll send you a PDF with the bullet points after the fact. I'm going to show you photographs. I'm going to give you quotes. I'm going to put numbers up. And I'm going to do it in a way so that I still remain, I don't want the word star, but I'm the focus. And if you don't like being the focus of attention, then you shouldn't be speaking, because the whole point is people are paying attention to you to hear the information, to learn, to glean knowledge, and to expand their horizons. So that's why you're doing this. So you need to have presence. You need to give a little more energy. You need to stand tall. You need to smile. There are things that just will ingratiate you with your audience and vice versa. And there's a symbiotic thing that happens when your audiences realize, hey, she's here for me. She's not here for applause. She's not here for money. She's not here to rotely repeat something she's done 500 times. She's here for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us have been to those presentations, right? Where it's death
Yep.
by PowerPoint. And, you know, I was guilty in the past. I thought I just have to cram as much data and information and like even preparing for our talk today, you know, you're like, I don't need to do slides, do I? And because you didn't really want to, you know, you wanted it just to be a free flowing dialogue, which I think is so important. And you're right. It's like if you show up and you smile, I mean, I think that is such a, you know, warm way to connect to your audience that you mentioned, and not to overwhelm them with the data. But you have all the data if they want it, and so that's a great, thing. Like follow up with me, and I'll give you anything you want. You want articles? I got 100 of them. You know, so that's great. That's great. Awesome. So, what other, so we talk about, you know, they want you to succeed, you know, limit how much data you're trying to force down, you know, like really connect with your audience, give your gift, you know, good positive self-talk. If there is one other, because I want to open it up to questions from our audience,
Sure.
but if there's one other thing that you could share, something that you feel would help people with public speaking, what else would that be?
Well, I talked about the self-talk, and I talked about gratitude and generosity and giving your gift.
Mhm.
There are two other things that I really think are important.
Yeah,
And the
please.
first one is cultivating appropriate pride. Our culture does not want us to be proud of what we do. And appropriate humility. And there's a balance there. You know, you're good at what you do. Well, thank you. I've been practicing and I've had good teachers. Boom. Appropriate pride, appropriate humility. The other thing I really believe in is having a sense of perspective. So as I used to tell my students, hey, it's a speech in Winooski, Vermont, you guys. You
Yeah.
know, it's not the UN. I'm not the president. it's not life or death. And even if I were teaching jet engine mechanics or brain surgery, people would not be leaving my lecture to go straight to the hangar to work on that jet engine. So there are all sorts of fail safes in place. So perspective is so key. And at the end of the day, at 11 o'clock, honest to God, Lisa, you know this is true. The only person who's going to be thinking about your speech is you.
Yeah.
Nobody else. I mean, people begin to forget 10 minutes after it's over, and they continue to forget. So in the end, they're going to remember maybe a quarter of what you said for a little while. And eventually they're going to recycle the papers that you gave them.
Yeah.
But if they didn't dislike their time with you and they felt inspired and encouraged, and they felt like, wow, I can try to shift my mindset about public speaking, turn it into an opportunity instead of a chore, an opportunity to give. People say, oh, but I don't, 60 people. Yeah, but it takes longer to talk to 60 people individually and share your gift. Why not put them all in the same room and give this jumbo package and watch people rip off the paper all together? So maintaining a sense of perspective on who you are, what you're doing, and how other people are perceiving it is really, really key. And then when you get good at this, enjoy it. Don't beat yourself up about it. If you did a good job, be proud, you know? It's not easy
Yeah.
to do, whatever it is
No.
we do.
Right,
So
right.
those are
And I
my
know
2
that a
words
lot
of
of,
wisdom.
yeah, no, it's wonderful because, this thing about, humility, we all, because a lot of us are in consulting and coaching, we want to be humble. We don't want to be braggarts, and we want people to, but like you said, we worked hard to get where we are. We studied, we read, got certified. I mean, so it's not like we're just dialing it this in. So when we get that acknowledgement, here comes the emotions again, right? Like, am I worthy of it? Or, oh my God, I don't want this attention. But instead, like you said, this thing about appropriate pride and humility, it's like, thank you. Because I have had people, and I'm sure we all have, that come up and go, oh my God, that was just so great. And you don't, instead of like, oh yeah, like discounting it, it's like acknowledging, like, thank you. And yes, I really worked hard to, like whatever it is, but to be appropriate about it. And then perspective, gosh, are you right about that? Because sometimes we think that, you know, like in a day from now, will this matter? In a week or a month, will it really matter? And we, like you said, we're not addressing the UN, we're just doing maybe a small talk for 5 people, but we take it so seriously and personally. And one of the big things in emotional intelligence, we have this acronym called QTIP, quit taking it personally, because we think that everybody's emotions are about us. And really, it could be any number of things. So we need to learn to connect and to share our gifts appropriately, where they can absorb it and really take away something for them, not for us, but for them.
For them, yes.
So
And that's
yeah,
when you start having self-compassion, and then you have compassion for others, and you realize you do the best you can, but not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to be able to hear you in this moment because of other things that are going on in their world. So
Yeah.
it lightens you up in all aspects of your life.
Wonderful.
And if you want to give a gift in a group, fantastic. But you can give a gift to the person at the store when you're buying that last holiday gift just by being pleasant, just by smiling and saying, how are you?
Mhm.
They don't hear
Right.
that very often. People get
No.
complaints, people get sneers, people have, on the phone, they're ignoring people.
Yeah.
We should do the compliment people. You'll feel better. They'll feel better. Holiday season will be better. Every day will be better. The more you give, the more you get. I mean, it's so trite, but Dad was right. My father used to say, being nice doesn't cost you anything.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I got on this, and I'm happy to
Thank
take
you.
questions.
Yes,
But
I would
oh my
love
gosh,
to, please, in chat or unmute yourself. What questions do you have for Lee? What would you like to go deeper on? This is our opportunity to ask questions.
And if no
So
one
I
has
have one.
got
Well, I
stories,
do have one.
got
I have one to get
stories.
started, and then hopefully people will. But my question is about public speaking. There's less and less opportunities to do so because of social media and people on their phones all the time. So do
Mhm.
you see that as hindering us in any way, like how we've become this social media very safe, on our phones to say whatever we want? And has it impacted our ability to be great public speakers?
Jeepers, that's a really good question, Lisa. I don't know. I don't think most people ever practice enough. I think some people, by virtue of putting themselves on camera all the time, have become better public speakers, but are they authentic? And I think authenticity is something an audience really feels. And I think we all know about the ability to manipulate the image that we show everybody. I mean, it could be, the house could be a mess, but this little square is looking good. I don't know. I mean, we can seek out ways to speak. Toastmasters is a great opportunity. Say yes when asked, and then record yourself. Best way to learn about your voice and what your voice can do is read a children's book on camera, as if you had a bunch of toddlers who needed to have their attention on you. Well, how do you read a book for kids? You get all excited and you learn to use your voice in excited ways and you're animated. Well, you don't have to, you tone that down a little bit with grown-ups, but if you're on a big stage, why tone it down? Be big. It's more
Yeah.
interesting than
Yeah,
looking
that's
at someone
awesome.
who's small and quiet.
It's a great.
I don't know if
That's a
that
great
answered your
idea.
question, but
No, thank you. I appreciate that. I know, Sarah, you had a question from earlier about preparing for TED Talks and stuff, but Sarah, go ahead and ask you a question.
Yes, good morning. My name
Hi.
is Sarah. I just wondered if you coach folks to be doing these TED Talks. I feel like a lot of coaches take a few paths as they look to grow, right? They write a book, they do a TED Talk, so I'm just curious if that's as part of your offering to others.
I have helped people do TED Talks on a number of occasions, TEDx Talks, I should say. And that has a lot more structure and memorization than most people realize. So there are skill sets you use when you do a TED Talk that literally there's a template for it. And yet you still have to have it memorized and you still have to look comfortable and relaxed if possible. So it does take practice and it does take different mindset because you are confined to a little circle and it's going to be less than 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 17, 20-minute attention span is like a long attention span. So I work with people to help them do TED Talks. Good news is there are plenty of TED Talks to watch, and the ones that appeal to you the most, look at what they're doing. How are they telling the stories? What images are they using? What are they saying? They're very often repeating stuff we've already heard, but they're saying it in a way that intrigues us or inspires us. So, but there are plenty of TED Talks, TEDx Talks all over the country, and you can do them. And I can help you and other people can help you too. There's a lot of coaches out there who help people get ready for TEDx Talks. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for
Thanks.
answering my question. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have fun and good luck with yours.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I can't wait to see it, Sarah. So we have a comment that I think is really relevant from Stephen. It says, if you're at the UN, you're probably delivering a message regardless of how it's being received. I don't think I've ever seen a speaker with prepared comments stop and adjust due to how they were being received. True. Alternatively, in a small group, regardless of the setting, this is much more likely. Delivery more or less is one-way skills are not the same as dialogue, which is a two-way skill. Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
why, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
no.
you're so much more fortunate if you get to work in person, because you learn to read and use your body language when you're a good speaker, and you learn to read other people's body language. And when you're looking around the room, literally making eye contact with that corner and the middle and the front row and all these people that you look at, you're absorbing their energy and you're seeing what they're doing. And if they're sitting back like this, they're not they're not digging what you're saying. But if they're sitting like this, they're probably just cold. So you are looking around, you're absorbing that information. And at the UN, I mean, that is, now you've got translators, that's a whole other ball game. But there are professional speech writers. But Obama, if you read his autobiography, both he and Michelle spent a lot of time practicing public speaking, a lot of time.
And it
It's
shows.
not easy. And reading off a script and making it interesting, a lot of work, because most people get 3 paragraphs in and then they're just cruising and it gets boring. So there's a lot that goes into, I say my little tagline is more than words, for sure. It's a lot more than words. So depending upon what someone wants to do, what's your goal? Just to get comfy or to deliver a speech to the UN, where you're supposed to be nervous. It's the UN.
Right.
So,
Right. And you have a script that you need to get through. I mean, you've been told
yes.
this is what our position is or whatever, but it is so different when it really is a dialogue and there's
Mhm.
give and take, and it's reading your environment and what
Yeah.
you're putting out there. So yeah. Sina, you have a question.
I do. Thank you, Lenora, for sharing so far. Definitely taking away the fact that the presentation is a gift that really changes the framing of it. Interested to know, what are some of the things that you do to shift the mood? Say you wake up one day or stuff is going on that is put you in a particular mood. What are some of the practical things you do before presenting that help to shift the mood just before you present?
Great question. So many of you probably heard of Amy Cuddy and her experiments with power poses, the super person pose and the starfish pose. If it works, like a lot of her colleagues, male colleagues, tried to kind of diss that, but she was able to reconstruct it. And whether it's just placebo or not, there's something about giving yourself a pep talk in one of these powerful poses that helps. Other things that I do, I eat proteins that are slow acting, carbs that are slow acting, as opposed to sugar and caffeine and all those things that bring you up and then drop you. I drink tepid water. I pray. I say, help me say things that will help other people, help me get out of myself and share what I know in a way that allows other people to learn and grow and the ripples to move forward. I don't know how my information will affect you, but if it helps you in any way, then you're going to be a better partner, colleague, coworker, neighbor, citizen. And the ripple effect brings me joy. At the very least, you're a professional, I tell myself, and it's my job. If it's my job to show up and be wonderful, then if I'm hungover, if I'm sick, if I'm tired, that doesn't matter. And I learned that working in radio. You got to sound like you're interested in playing that really terrible song for the 9,000th time, but you can't make it sound like you hated it. So there's some acting that goes into it, but mostly it's just help me be authentic and true. And if you love what you're talking about and you trust your audience and you love yourself and trust yourself, you know that it's not going to be perfect, but nobody knows what you were planning on saying. If you screw it up a little bit, it's not going to ruin anybody's life, including yours. And so we do have so much more freedom than we think we do when we walk into a public speaking situation. But yeah, do your best to feel your best, obviously. And then I suppose if you have laryngitis or something, you might say to the audience, I'm not able to project the way I would like to today because I have a vocal issue. I apologize. And if you need me to repeat something or you can't hear something, please tell me. Because so many of us just talk and we assume everybody hears us, but millions of people don't hear well. Millions of people don't hear well. And we have to factor that in. We have to factor in the time it takes to process information. The older we get, the longer it takes, and so on and so forth. As I say, more than words, so much more than words. I hope that helped, Zena, but there are ways to do it. Things that make you, tennis players listen to music before they hit the court and win yet another Grand Slam.
That's great. Those are fantastic practical examples. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. That was great. And I think preparing, we do have this thing, fake it till you make it. And I know that a lot of people are like, no, don't do that, but sometimes you have to, because the show must go on. And there are days that we just aren't feeling for many different reasons. But I loved what you shared about actually asking, whether it's praying or meditating or whatever, but saying, like, help me just, have them hear my message. And the other thing is about, if you're passionate about what you're delivering on, people know it. If you really care, they can feel your care and your energy around that topic you're presenting. And it's contagious. We say emotions are contagious. They are. They really are. And then the other thing I took away was like how you're delivering, like what is your body language, your tone of voice. And we use that to connect to people. And I know when I first started, I would talk a mile a minute because I had so much I wanted to share. And I'm a really emotive person. And I found that people couldn't hear me because I was speaking so quickly. And that was very off-putting for a lot of people. So I still have to remind myself to slow it down. And even like reading at church, like I'm like, slow it down. So those are some really great points. I want to also bring up a point that Rob shared with us. He says, I find the pressure ramps up when the audience starts videoing. Oh yeah, it's harder to be authentic, and I have to revert to reading written formal notes because I'll end up on the internet. I can relax when just speaking, but when people start to video, I really find it hard. And boy, it happens a lot these days, which is so, so true.
And so fulfilling prophecy right there. The minute you start to get tense about that, that's when your enjoyment factor is going to be lessened. There are so many things you can't control, like 99.9% of everything, but you can control the way you look at it and in a moment. And so the videos go on and you just think to yourself, well, you're going to get me, warts and all today. You're going to get the best of me and you'll probably get a few mistakes too. Enjoy the heck out of it. But most people do not rewatch that stuff. Think about all the times you've saved things to get back to and never did. And they upload things to YouTube, millions and millions of things every single day. Chances are, again, it's our ego that tells us we have to be perfect. For whom? For what? And a camera, yeah. I find it worse when people start texting. That to me is, oh, you're not paying attention. I've lost you. So the camera, okay. And if I move out of it, that's your problem because I'm going to move around. I'm going to keep it interesting for everybody else. And if they can't hear me, well, you need to buy a more expensive camera because people in the audience heard me. But if it didn't translate on there. But yeah, I know there's so many factors. But as I say, the more comfortable you get, the easier all this becomes, the easier it becomes. It's just practice, just like with anything. 5 piano lessons, you're not on stage playing Chopin. 5 speeches, you're not doing a TED Talk. Right. So Just be
Yeah.
patient with yourself. We adults are so impatient. I mean, we're using skills we've had our whole lives, and now we think we should do them perfectly, but the stakes have changed. And so cut yourself some slack and then let it go, because everybody else will forget, really and
Yeah.
truly.
Yeah, and it does, like you said, it does take practice. I mean, they say to
Mhm.
get good at anything, what takes 15,000 hours or even more, you know. When you look at, athletes, and you look at people who are artists, I mean, they practice hours and hours and hours. It just didn't happen for most of those people. And so practicing, starting small, and practicing in front of, friendly people. And I think that for me, you get better with time, and starting small, and like, is it going to be the end of the world if I, putting it back into perspective, rightly, like, does it really matter if, as long as I see, Dr. Brusman, how you mentioned about love and being contagious. I mean, if we love the subject we're talking about, if we love ourselves, if we love our audience, if we love, the opportunity to share our gifts, that really is powerful and can really make a big difference. So Lee, but go ahead.
I said it ripples out.
It
Absolutely.
does
All
ripple
parts of your
out.
life, all parts of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, Lee, I can't thank you enough for, and I know that we have your information so people can go to your website, or they can email, and get in touch with you. I know it's been a gift, you sharing yourself with me, and because we talk regularly, I really have learned so much from you. And so I want to thank you very much, and hope you'll stay part of our community going forward as well, because I know that you believe in emotions and emotional intelligence as well. And I want to thank everybody today for coming. Like I mentioned, that we are going to be doing these every third Wednesday throughout 24. And I'm also doing a bonus Zoom call on January 10th, which you'll be hearing about soon. David and I are doing a certification course at the end of January in the Mesquite. And I'm going to be talking about how to your return on investment, and how to monetize these skills you're learning. Because we know, as consultants and coaches, while we love to get certified, we also want to return on our investment. So I'll be sending out a link and how to sign up. And I hope you can join me on the 10th of January, same time as this call, but it's going to be a bonus Zoom call. So that being said, happy holidays, happy new year. We wish you all the best in
All the best.
happiness and health and prosperity and love. Thank you all, and we hope to see you really soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Lee. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lise.
You're amazing as always.
Thank you. Well, takes one to know one, as they say, my friend.
Thanks. And we can stop recording, I guess. So that was great. I'm glad we recorded this.